What up, all my fight fans? UFC 311 is this Saturday, and I cannot wait. It is the first pay-per-view of 2025, and it is a stacked card. It is a great card. Honestly, I have not seen a card like this in quite some time. Probably the last really good card like this that was highly competitive and such in all fights. I would say probably that October card where Robert Whittaker took on Khamzat, where Ilia Topuria took on Max Holloway. You know, there was a lot of good fun fights on that card. You know, the New York card and the December card wasn't the greatest. But this one is going to be 100% top notch. I feel it in my bones. I cannot wait, guys. I cannot wait. So let's break it down, shall we? In the main event, you got a rematch in Islam Makhachev taking on Arman Tsarukyan. Oof. This is a rematch, guys. Back in the earlier days, well, not that earlier days, but, you know, years ago, back when Arman Tsarukyan's first UFC fight, could have been his first MMA fight. Actually, I can't really recall, all honesty, but he took on Islam Makhachev, and Islam Makhachev, you know, this was relatively his close fight. You know, he wasn't like the Islam that he is today. So these guys were both new. These guys were both new on the block. These guys were both fresh in the lightweight division. And they went the distance. They went the distance, and for good reason. For one reason, you had Arman Tsarukyan, who, again, almost next to no experience in the octagon, next to no experience in the UFC, and he's able to go the distance with Islam Makhachev. Islam Makhachev, from what his coaches and his teammates were saying, he was actually very sick that day, also was on antibiotics, so he did not know too much about Arman. Arman did not know too much about Islam, so these guys pretty much went the distance to whatever skills that they had to themselves. So it was still a big deal. It was still something that you want to look at. You want to check out that fight, because these guys in their earlier days, you know, they showed a lot of heart. They showed a lot of skills. But now in this day and age, you got Islam Makhachev, who is the pound for pound number one, who is the lightweight champion of the world, taking on the number one contender in the world, Arman Tsarukyan. Here we go. Like, I want to say what's been like 6, 7, 8 years later. And it's going to be a really great fight, guys. It's going to be really great. You got Islam, who's been dominant in his past performances. Guys like Alexander Volkanovski, Dustin Poirier, and Charles Oliveira when he won the belt. You know, that match with Charles Oliveira, I feel like that was the most flawless victory I've seen in quite some time from any UFC fighter. You know, it looked like he was untouched. It looked like he was unfazed. It didn't really look like Charles Oliveira could do anything. The last time we seen him in real trouble, where he could have lost the fight, was against Alexander Volkanovski. We know how that went in the second fight. And then we saw how he went toe-to-toe with Dustin Poirier. Now, Dustin Poirier really took it to him as well. Dustin Poirier was able to cut him. Dustin Poirier was able to give him a lot of trouble, but Dustin Poirier was and is a veteran of the sport. You know, he's been around for quite some time, and he's been through a lot of wars, but he still was able to weather the storm and take Islam Makhachev to the 5th round and have Islam Makhachev in trouble. Even though Islam was pretty much winning that whole fight, Islam Makhachev was still dominating that whole fight. It wasn't necessarily close, but it was still a very, very tough night for Islam. That was his last performance. Arman Tsarukyan, on the other hand, he's been on a tear. You know, he had a very close fight against Charles Oliveira, which got him to the spot now. And then he also had another fight where he dominated Beneil Dariush. First round knockout, 100% just done. This guy was supposed to be a number one contender himself, you know, and he went toe-to-toe for a few other guys. But right now, this is a big test for Arman Tsarukyan, because I feel like he hasn't necessarily went toe-to-toe with a lot of the top 5 guys, like a Dustin Poirier, like a Justin Gaethje, or even a Michael Chandler, and such and so forth. But his biggest test was Charles Oliveira, and he actually did really good against Charles Oliveira. Charles Oliveira is no punk. Charles Oliveira is somebody that you definitely want to be on your A game with, 100%. So who's going to win this fight, guys? Well, odds are definitely Islam. Odds are in the favor for Islam, because Islam Makhachev's wrestling, his grappling, his everything. He's pretty much one of the best all-around mixed martial artists in the world right now. You know, because he has great striking. He's not just like your Khabib, or Khabib pretty much was able, what he wanted to do was always take you to the ground and just ground and pound you. He almost reminded me of like a Mark Coleman or something, you know. But where Islam, if he doesn't go to the ground, he's really fine with the stand-up. You know, he's really, really good with the stand-up. He's not necessarily chasing for that takedown. You know, if he gets it, he gets it. But it's not something it's just his automatic go-to. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like with Islam, if he could keep it on, if he could get it to the ground, it's going to be a really good, interesting to see how he can handle some of the great skills and tactics of Arman Tsarukyan's. And I feel like he really doesn't have too much to worry about on the feet. You know, Arman Tsarukyan is very tricky. Arman Tsarukyan is very tricky on the feet. You know, we saw what he was able to do with his knees. We saw what he was able to, all the flexibility that he has with Charles Oliveira and such like that. Charles Oliveira is also a really great striker himself. You know, so you really, really want to be on your A game regarding when you face Arman Tsarukyan, because Arman Tsarukyan is somebody that is very, very skillful when it comes to being on the stand-up. So, but Arman Tsarukyan, as I'm talking about him, how he can win, he really needs to do his best to avoid the ground. If he could avoid the ground at all costs, I feel like he would have a little bit more of an advantage. Because again, Islam Makhachev is just so damn good on the ground. So damn good. His grappling, his wrestling, his jiu-jitsu, everything's just such a top notch. You know, with the guys what they're doing over there in Khabib's camp is really, really remarkable. You know, we've seen him being able to handle and weather the storm of a lot of great talent in the UFC, Islam Makhachev. But I'm sure we have yet to see somebody that's really, really good and when it comes to wrestling as much as he is. We've seen him against Alexander Volkanovski, who is really good, but guys, come on, he's a featherweight. And we see him against Dustin Poirier, who Dustin Poirier is just a little bit older. Now, I'm not trying to make any kind of excuses regarding Islam and his record and such, but at the end of the day, I feel like this is a big test for Arman Tsarukyan and Islam Makhachev, because they're both in their primes right now. They both have fought each other once, so they know a little bit about each other. They both have improved a great deal, and they are I want to say they're both at the highest level they could possibly be. The highest level, you know, and they're both fresh. They're not older, they're not younger, they're just right there. Right there. You know, no one is, I would just say it, over the hill. No one is a baby in this fight. It's going to be a very, very skillful, tactical fight. It's not going to be your blood and guts war. You're not going to see a Justin Gaethje, Dustin Poirier type of fight. It's going to be very skillful, very tactical. You know, I know that Arman is going to be still a little worried about that takedown. He's still going to be a little worried regarding like whether or not he lets his hands go, because that's the tricky thing about fighting Islam. You want to let your hands go, but you know if you let your hands go, you're leaving openings for getting taken down. So that's the trickiest thing about fighting Islam. I feel like Islam pretty much has this one. I do feel like it's still going to be a very difficult fight just due to the fact of his latest competition, because of Alexander Volkanovski and because of Dustin Poirier. You got one that's a featherweight and one that's over the hill. So this is by far his freshest, up-to-date opponent. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this one. The main event's going to be fire, guys. In the co-main event, you have Umar Nurmagomedov taking on the champion of the world, Merab Dvalishvili. Sorry if I'm saying that last name wrong. But, you know, Merab, that guy's a beast. Merab, you can't take anything away from him. Merab is such a dominant force in that division, in the bantamweight division, one of the stackest divisions in the UFC. You know, we saw what he was able to do against Sean O'Malley. We saw what he was able to do to Peter Yan, to Jose Aldo, to Henry Cejudo. I mean, the guy has a record and a resume that speaks for itself. And that's why I feel like he should have the edge over Umar Nurmagomedov. Now, don't get me wrong, Umar is a very tough competitor. But at the end of the day, it's hard to see how tough you are. It's hard to see or find out how good you are if you have not fought the opponents. Now, I know what a lot of people are saying. It's not his fault. Of course it's not his fault. You know, it's not, you know, he's wanted to fight everybody, but nobody's wanted to fight him. Understandable, 100%. But at the end of the day, you still didn't fight, or you still couldn't fight, I should say, rephrase my words. You still couldn't fight some of these guys that Merab has fought. You know, we do not know how good your wrestling is, because the only real top level fighter that we saw you against was Corey Sandhagen. Corey Sandhagen, don't get me wrong, he's a really good fighter, but he's no I want to say, Henry Cejudo when it comes to the wrestling. And we saw what happened when he went against Peter Yan. He didn't do too well. He lost. And we saw what Merab did to Peter Yan. Now, no, MMA math doesn't always work, but at least we know for a fact how Merab does against Peter Yan and how Umar or Corey Sandhagen did against Peter Yan. So there's that. So I can't necessarily pick Umar just because of his last name, just because of who his family is, and just because who he trains with. Yeah, he looked excellent against Corey Sandhagen. Excellent. But I still didn't get to see enough of him in order to pick him. I seen so much regarding Merab, regarding him and how he fights and on who he fights. You know, from Sean O'Malley to Henry Cejudo to Peter Yan to Jose Aldo and so forth. I've seen it all. I've been able to see it, and I've been able to see what he was able to handle, what gives him trouble, and etc., etc. I just haven't been able to do that with Umar, and unfortunately, I feel like that's why the edge would have to go to Peter Yan. Or excuse me, to Merab, because he has that edge. He knows what it's like to be in there with guys with really good wrestling. He knows what it's to be in there with guys with really good striking. You know, he knows what it's like to be in there with all these guys, because he's been in there with all these guys. So in order for Umar to win, he really needs to dictate the pace. He really needs to go after Merab. He really needs to show Merab and be the bully to Merab that, hey, I can be as fast as you. I can be as strong as you. I could be better striker than you. I can actually out wrestle you. I can do everything that you think you could do better. I do better. And he needs to really do that, because Merab has a gas tank that lasts for days. He can fight five rounds in one night if he wanted to. The guy does not get tired, and he loves to wrestle. He loves to grapple. We saw what he was able to do in the takedowns that he did against Peter Yan. We saw the the striking that he was able to do to guys like Henry Cejudo, and again the wrestling with Henry Cejudo. He's a really great fighter in that division, and Umar is gonna have to show him that he's even better. The way Peter Yan needs to win is that he always needs to be the guy, what he does. He needs to continue doing what he does, but he needs to amplify it just a little bit more. He needs to go heavier more. He needs to do more in there just to prove that he's better than Umar. You know, because a lot of people are riding on Umar just due to the fact of his last name and how great that training camp that he has and the people that he has behind him. So, of course, Umar is a little under pressure. I don't think he's going to feel that pressure, but I do feel like, you know, he wants to live up to that name. He wants to live up to that last name. He wants to live up to his team, and he wants to show everybody that, hey, he's just as good as everybody else on that team. 100%. But at the end of the day, I do feel like Merab Dvalishvili is going to retain the belt come Saturday night. And also in the card, you have, which is going to be a really great fight, you have Jamal Hill taking on Yuri Prochazka in the light heavyweight belt. It's going to be a very fun fight. These guys do not wrestle. These guys do not grapple. These guys are not looking for jiu-jitsu. We're going to see a banger of a fight, I feel. We're going to see a pure striking match in this fight. You know, Yuri, he's always been unorthodox. He's always been weird when he comes in and fighting. He throws his punches at weird angles. He throws his strikes at weird angles. He throws his kicks at weird angles. Where you have Jamal Hill is very, I want to say, basic, and I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, but he's pretty much he shows the fundamentals of boxing. He shows the fundamentals of striking. You know, he's not unorthodox. You know, he's not really throwing it at weird angles and we're catching people at weird angles. He's pure power. When he catches you with a power shot, when he catches you with a jab, he actually is able to really hurt you. So this is going to be a very fun fight. Also, I feel like on the line is almost a title shot, because we know Jamal Hill wants that rematch with Alex Pereira. We've seen that video. We've seen him calling Alex Pereira at the UFC PI. They're going toe-to-toe with each other. They're talking smack to each other, and he wants that rematch. He feels like, you know, he could have done better at UFC 300. He did get stopped by Alex Pereira, so he's going to definitely do his best in order to get that rematch with Alex Pereira. Yuri Prochazka had already gotten a rematch with Alex Pereira, and he already been stopped twice against Alex Pereira. And I feel like if he gets stopped again in this division, he is done with the division. He's gonna probably go down to middleweight or something else. He's gonna try something else, because at what are you gonna do next? I mean, I believe he will be 3 out of his last 4 if he loses this fight. If he loses this fight, he's 3 out of his last 4, and that's not good. And you're definitely not going to be getting any kind of title shot anytime soon. So there you have it, guys. That UFC 311. There's more fights on the card, I'm sure, that we would love to talk about. But hey, look, I'm definitely looking forward to it. It's this Saturday, first pay-per-view of the month. I cannot wait. Like, subscribe, hit that notification button, and I'll see you guys in the next video.